Hello everyone and welcome back to Navakokon Education Society's DBJ College Chipulun. Myself Mr. Arun Jadhav from Department of Environment Education and Water Security. And today we are going to start our second lesson, environmental pollution. In this lesson we are going to discuss five important points. The first point is air pollution, in which we will discuss what is meant by air pollution, what are air pollutants, what are sources of air pollution, and at the end of the first point we will discuss impacts of air pollution on humans and on environment. Second point is climate change, in which we are going to discuss what is meant by climate change and what are the impacts of climate change. Third point is soil pollution, in which we will discuss what is meant by soil pollution, its sources and effects. And the next point is noise pollution, in which we will discuss sources and effects of noise pollution. And the last point is solid waste management, in which we will discuss the sources of solid waste, the management of solid waste, and the effects of solid waste pollution. So this is all about the second lesson. Let us start with the first point, air pollution. Now air pollution is nothing but degradation of air quality. Air pollution is the entry of unwanted matter, biomolecules or other harmful materials into the Earth's atmosphere. It causes diseases, death to humans and damage to other living organisms. As per Air Act 1981, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, which is also called as Air Act. So according to this act, definition of air pollution is presence of any solid, liquid or gaseous substances in an atmosphere in such a concentration as may be or tend to be injurious to human being or other living organisms or plants or property or environment. So presence of any matter, solid, liquid or gases in an atmosphere in such a concentration which may be harmful to humans, which may be harmful to other living organisms, plants, animals, property or environment. So this is the definition of air pollution. Now after studying air pollution, let us talk about air pollutants. Air pollutants are the substances that are responsible for air pollution. And air pollutants are, first is particulate matter, which is also called as PM. Particulate matters are nothing but soot, smoke, tar or dust and domestic waste. So here in this diagram we can see that the sources from which soot, smoke, tar, dust is emitted out into the atmosphere. So this particulate matter act as a air pollutant. Second important air pollutant is toxic gases. Now the toxic gases are carbon monoxide, CO, then oxides of nitrogen, NOx, oxides of sulfur, that is SOx, halogens and VOC, that is volatile organic compounds. So here we can see toxic gases like SOx, oxides of sulfur, then carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, that is NOx. So these are the toxic gases. Along with these, halogens and volatile organic compounds are also there. Now the third important air pollutant is metals. In metals, especially lead, zinc, iron and chromium are the main metals which are responsible for air pollution. So here is the iron which is responsible for pollution, and here is the lead. So this is how metals are also the air pollutants. Now the next air pollutant is industrial pollutants. In industrial pollutants, benzene, ether, acetic acid and cyanide compounds are there. And here in this picture we can see how are these chemical compounds or the pollutants emitted out into the atmosphere. Now the next is agricultural pollutants. Pollutants which are discharged from agricultural activities. Now agricultural pollutants are pesticides, herbicides, fungicides and chemical fertilizers. So here in this diagram, in this picture we can see how are pesticides, herbicides are sprayed on on crops, and during this spraying of pesticides, these are the aerosols of these pesticides, they remain there in the atmosphere. One more picture is here which shows how are agricultural activities responsible for emission of carbon dioxide and other dangerous gases into the atmosphere. So this is how agricultural pollutants are also there in the list of air pollutants. Next is photochemical pollutants. In photochemical pollutants, ozone, oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, aldehydes, ethylene, photochemical smog, and peroxyacetyl nitrate, that is PAN, are there. So these are the photochemical pollutants. Here is the picture of photochemical smog, which is really very dangerous to the humans, which creates various respiratory issues, and it also affects visibility. So one more air pollutant is radiation pollutants. Radiation pollutants are the pollutants which are discharged out from radioactive power plants, from radioactive substances. So radiation pollutants are radioactive substances and radioactive fallouts, the emissions emitted out from nuclear power plants and from nuclear substances or radioactive substances. So all these are the air pollutants. Now after talking about air pollutants, let us talk about sources of air pollution. So here is the picture of accident in nuclear power plant, how our nuclear emissions are there which are dangerous to the humans and for the environment. Now let us talk about sources of air pollution. There are two sources of air pollution. First is natural sources and another is anthropogenic or man-made sources. So these are the natural sources and these are anthropogenic or man-made sources. Let us talk about natural sources first. Natural sources of air pollution are volcanic eruptions, natural activities like volcanic eruptions, forest fires, natural forest fires, biological decay which emit methane in atmosphere, then pollen grains, marshes, and radioactive materials. So these are the natural sources of air pollutants or air pollution. In anthropogenic sources, indoor air pollution or indoor air pollutants like household burning, vehicular emissions, gases emitted out from vehicular exhaust, fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels, agricultural activities like spraying of pesticides, herbicides, industrial emissions, dangerous gases, toxic gases emitted out from industries, and thermal power plants. So these are the anthropogenic sources of air pollution. So this is all about natural and man-made sources of air pollution. Now the next point is effects of air pollution. So let us talk about effects of air pollution. So here is the picture which tells us about sources of air pollution. Now the next point is effects of air pollution. So let us discuss these effects. Now in this point, that is effects of air pollution, we will discuss effects of various air pollutants on human being and on environment. Let us start with sulfur dioxide. The first pollutant is sulfur dioxide. Let us talk about its sources first, and thereafter we will talk about its effects on human health and on environment. So the sources of sulfur dioxide are burning of fossil fuels and substances that contain sulfur. So burning of fossil fuels and the burning of substances containing sulfur results in emission of sulfur dioxide and other oxides of sulfur. Now these oxides of sulfur are having dangerous impacts on human health. Effects like respiratory problems, then heart and lung disorders, and visual impairment. These are the effects of sulfur dioxide on human health. Respiratory problems, oxides of sulfur causes respiratory issues, heart and lung disorders, and visual impairment in humans. While on environment, it causes chlorosis and death of plant tissues. So sulfur dioxide is very dangerous to plants also because it causes chlorosis and death of plant tissues. So this is all about oxides of sulfur, one of the important air pollutants. Now the second important air pollutant is oxides of nitrogen. Now let us talk about sources of oxides of nitrogen first. Sources of NOx or oxides of nitrogen are fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels, welding work, refining petrol and metals. So these are some of the sources of oxides of nitrogen, and these oxides of nitrogen which are emitted out from fossil fuels, burning of fossil fuels, welding works, refining of petrol and metals, these oxides of nitrogen causes it generates peroxyacetyl nitrate. So it generates peroxyacetyl nitrate, that is PAN. It also causes pulmonary disorders, respiratory infections, and it is very toxic at high concentration. So these are the effects of oxides of nitrogen on human health. It causes pulmonary disorders, respiratory infections, and very toxic at high concentration. As far as environmental effects are concerned, it causes acid rain, which reduces crop yields. Oxides of nitrogen causes acid rain. Actually, oxides of sulfur also causes acid rain. So oxides of sulfur and nitrogen are responsible for acid rain, because sulfuric acid and nitric acid are formed due to oxides of sulfur and nitrogen in atmosphere. So this is how SOx, oxides of sulfur, and NOx, that is oxides of nitrogen, are responsible for environmental degradation. Let us talk about next important air pollutant, that is aerosols, that is dust, smoke, and smog. So these aerosols are the sources of these aerosols are desert dusts, volatile organic compounds, smoke from forest fire, and volcanic eruptions. So these are the sources of aerosols: desert dusts, volatile organic compounds, smoke from forest fires, and volcanic eruptions. Now these aerosols causes dangerous impacts on human health, like it interferes with ability of lungs to exchange gases. So these aerosols are having impacts on the lungs of the humans. It interferes with the ability of lungs to exchange gases, and in case of environment, it influences climate by scattering light. It scatters light, and by scattering light it can influence our climate. Now the next air pollutant is particulate matter, PM, that is PM 2.5 and PM 10. So particulate matter of 2.5 micron and particulate matter of 10 micron size. Sources of these particulate matters are bushfires, dust storms, combustion and mineral processing, and brickworks. So these are some of the sources of particulate matter through which they are emitted out into the atmosphere. These particulate matters can cause respiratory problems, diseases like asthma, bronchitis. It also causes lung infection. It reduces lung functioning, lung and liver fibrosis, heart stroke, bone problems. It can cause cancer, and it can also causes heavy metal poisoning, because the dust particles, minute particles of heavy metals, when they enter in our body, they are responsible for various health issues. So particulate matters of various things can cause respiratory issues. It causes asthma, bronchitis. It reduces lung functioning. It causes lung or liver fibrosis, heart stroke, bone problems, cancer, and heavy metal poisoning. So these are the impacts of particulate matter in humans. Now in case of environment, particulate matters can adversely affect biodiversity by accumulating soot or black layer on the leaves of the plants. So this is how biodiversity is affected, especially plants are affected due to particulate matter, due to which ultimately animals are also affected. So these are the effects of particulate matter on human health and on environment. Now the next important air pollutant is carbon monoxide, CO. Now carbon monoxide, sources of carbon monoxide are the incomplete combustion of fossil fuel. One of the largest source of carbon monoxide is incomplete combustion of fossil fuels. Along with this, vehicular exhaust, steel industries are also responsible for emission of carbon monoxide. These carbon monoxide in humans can reduces oxygen carrying capacity of blood. Carbon monoxide reduces oxygen carrying capacity of blood. It can cause cardiovascular problems. Infants, pregnant women, and elderly persons are at high risk. So if carbon monoxide is inhaled by pregnant women and by the elderly people, then it can cause dangerous effects on the health of pregnant women and elder people. So these are the effects of carbon monoxide on human health. As far as environment is concerned, carbon monoxide is one of the important greenhouse gases. It can cause global warming. Now the next important air pollutant is ozone. Ozone is, as we all know, ozone is essential for us because it protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiations. But now if we talk about the sources of ozone, then ozone is not directly discharged from any of the sources. Ozone, if we talk about natural formation of ozone, then in atmosphere ozone is formed due to reaction between ultraviolet light and oxygen. So this is how ozone is formed naturally. As far as man-made ozone is concerned, oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds, so these substances combine chemically with oxygen during sunny and high temperature conditions, which results in ozone formation. So this is how ozone is formed through man-made activities, and in natural processes ozone is formed due to the reaction between ultraviolet light and oxygen. So this is how ozone is formed in atmosphere and through man-made activities, and this ozone can cause respiratory problems such as throat irritation, asthma, bronchitis and chest pain. This ozone can cause respiratory problems, throat irritation, asthma, bronchitis and chest pain. As far as environment is concerned, it is one of the important greenhouse gases. It can cause global warming. It also affects the plants. It assists in the formation of peroxyacetyl nitrate, and as told earlier, it acts as a greenhouse gas. So this is how ozone can cause various impacts on human health and on environment. After ozone, let us talk about lead. Now the sources of lead are lead based paints. Sometimes it is entered in human body through drinking water, and leaded petrol. So these are the sources of lead. Now this lead affects blood and nervous system in humans. This lead affects blood and nervous system in humans, and it can increase in atmospheric lead due to vehicular emission. So emission of lead in atmosphere can cause various effects on environment also. The last important pollutant is ammonia, NH3. Sources of ammonia are agriculture, that is the especially use of urea, which results in ammonia formation, and dairy farming. So these are the sources of ammonia. This ammonia causes burning of eyes, nose, throat and respiratory tract. Ammonia can cause burning of eyes, irritation of eyes, nose, or burning of eyes, nose, throat and respiratory tract. Prolonged effect results in blindness or lung damage, and sometimes it can cause death. So these are the dangerous effects of ammonia. It causes burning of eyes, nose, throat and respiratory tract. The prolonged effect results in blindness, lung damage, or sometimes it can result in death. In case of environment, ammonia affects aquatic organisms. So living organisms in water bodies are affected due to ammonia. So these are the effects of air pollution. So after talking about effects of air pollution, let us talk about air quality index. What is meant by air quality index? Air quality index is the index used to show level of air pollution in a particular area. What kind of air quality, what kind of atmospheric quality we have in our area is indicated by air quality index. It is used by government to communicate to public about the quality of air. The public health risk increases as air quality index rises. So with rising in air quality index, we can say that the atmosphere in our area is highly polluted. So let us talk about air quality values, index values, and the level of health concern. If the value of air quality index is in between 0 to 50, then we can say that the atmosphere in our area is good. If the air quality index value is in between 0 to 50, then the atmosphere is good. If value of AQI, air quality index, is between 51 to 100, then we can say that the atmosphere is satisfactory. Atmospheric conditions are satisfactory. For the values of air quality index in between 101 to 200, atmosphere is moderately polluted. For the values between 201 to 300, atmosphere is poor. So in many cities, atmospheric conditions are really poor because we have emitted dangerous gases in high amount in our atmosphere. When air quality index value is in between 301 to 400, we can say that the atmosphere is very poor. And if the air quality index is between 401 to 500, then we can say that the atmospheric conditions are really very severe. Let me tell you that in many Indian cities, air quality index value is many of the times it is beyond 1000. So in many Indian cities, the atmospheric air quality is really degrading day by day, and it is becoming really difficult to breathe in such a polluted air. Now, after talking about air quality index, let us talk about control measures of air pollution. How can air pollution be controlled? It is very essential that we have to reduce this air pollution, and to control this air pollution, we need to avoid burning of firewood, charcoal, garbage, etc. We can avoid burning of these things like firewood, charcoal and garbage. In India, more than 50% of the people live in rural areas, and these rural people use firewood as one of the important source of fuel. So we have to stop this burning of firewood. Instead, we can use other fuels like LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, and in India it is gradually increasing. Use of LPG is gradually increasing and use of firewood is decreasing day by day. So by avoiding burning of firewood, charcoal and garbage, we can reduce air pollution in our area. Next important measure is we have to use renewable energy resources. We have to use energy resources that can be renewed again and again, and we have to use conventional energy resources like petrol, diesel, coal, etc. wherever it is not possible to use renewable energy resources. So our first priority should be renewable energy resources. One more important thing to control air pollution is there must be strict implementation of pollution control laws. We are having various pollution control laws: Environmental Protection Act EPA 1986, Air Act of 1981, Water Act of 1974. So there must be a strict implementation of these pollution control laws. One more important thing is height of chimneys. If in case of industries, height of chimneys should be increased to highest possible levels so that pollutants can be discharged at the highest level in the atmosphere so that they cannot affect human health. So to increase height of the chimneys is also one of the important measure. One more thing is we should develop green belts in industries. Now this development of green belts by tree plantation is very essential because trees can absorb polluting gases and particulate matter which settles on the leaf surface. So this is how development of green belts can help us to reduce level of air pollution. One more important thing is we have to use public transport instead of using private transport. So use of public transport facilities can also reduce level of pollution, especially atmospheric pollution in our area. So these are some of the measures by which we can control our air pollution. Let us remind air pollution controlling measures. First is we need to avoid burning of firewoods, charcoal and garbage. Secondly, we should use renewable energy resources. Third, there must be strict implementation of pollution control laws. Next, we should increase height of the chimneys of the industries. Then we should develop green belts, and in the end we have to use public transport. So these are some of the air pollution controlling measures. This is all about air pollution. So here are some of the do's and don'ts. How to control, to reduce air pollution, what should we do and what should we do not. So let us talk about these do's and don'ts. Let us talk about do's first. So here, what should we do? We should walk to work or ride a bicycle. To reduce vehicular emission, we have to walk to work or ride a bicycle, by which we can control vehicular emission. We should try to use public transport whenever possible. As told earlier, we should use public transport facilities and not private transport. If we want to use private transport, then we can at least go for carpool, where 2 or 4 people can ride in one car. Instead of using 4 cars, carpool can be the best option, where 2 or 4 people can ride in one car. Get a valid pollution under control certificate PUC from authorized testing centers. We should get this certificate regularly for our vehicles. This is one very important thing to minimize vehicular emission. We should keep automobiles fuel filters clean, and by keeping them clean we can save our fuel. So to keep automobile fuel filters clean is very essential, because cleaning of such filters can reduce fuel consumption. One more important thing is maintain recommended tire pressure. We should maintain tire pressure in our vehicles. Proper tire pressure should be there. And very important thing, one more, is we should use biofuels. Use of biofuels can also be the best option. Now let us talk about the things that we don't have to do. Let us talk about don'ts. Extensive use of private vehicles. We should avoid extensive use of private vehicles. We should avoid traveling on congested roads during rush hours. We can avoid it. Then next thing is keeping the engine running on for more than 1 minute at traffic signals. So we should stop the engines at traffic signals. That increases fuel consumption. When we keep our engines at a starting mode, it consumes more fuel. So we should stop our engines of our vehicles to control vehicular emission. Use of clutch pedals as a footrest. So it should be avoided. We don't have to use clutch pedal as footrest, because it consumes more fuel. And a very important thing is we should avoid use of leaded petrol. Use of leaded petrol should be avoided. So these are the do's and don'ts for reduction of air pollution. So this is how we can reduce air pollution and we can make our atmosphere better. So here we have talked about air pollution, then air pollutants, sources of air pollution, air quality index, effects of air pollution on human health and on environment, and in the end we have talked about control measures of air pollution along with do's and don'ts. Thank you.